Humor is one of the most basic kind of reliefs that anybody can have.
And how do you teach somebody that? Dr. Bill Geis, doctor of
Psychology.
psychology. What does that mean, doctor of psychology? So no psychiatry, so you don't prescribe medication.
I don't prescribe medication, but I'm a psychiatry professor.
Yeah.
And so sometimes they employ psychologists in psychiatry departments. And so I do research and therapy and that sort of thing. Lots of different kind of clinical activities.
You have a private practice?
I do.
And you talk to people about their problems.
That's right.
Okay.
That's
so here's what I want to ask about. Depression. And to me, I've been depressed and I've been sad. Okay.
Yes.
It seems to me, I'm sad, everybody gets sad. It seems to me depression is when you stay there and don't get out of that sadness. How am I doing? I was a psychology major in college, and then I quit that, and I figured I'd rather be a comedian because I wanted to make fun of people instead of help them. That's actually a true story. I did. It's fun to make fun of people, to laugh and make fun of the world, isn't it? But little did I know, making people laugh and that laughter would have a major difference in people's thinking and lives. And that's what leads us to this episode, which I'm excited and inspired to bring you, how humor and laughter can help you get through life's most difficult times, especially depression, suicide, and of course, sadness, which Bill talked about. We're going to get to that in a little bit. But remember, sadness and depression is all in our thinking. It's all what we think about. Well, so is humor. Humor is what we think about and what makes us laugh. So what happens if we stop the sadness and depressing thoughts, switch it with humor? That's what happens. And so that's what I wanted to talk to Dr. Geis about, to find out in all of his experience if all of this worked. So, and again, I'll get back to Billy right now. And Bill, I mean, come on, the bottom line is everybody's sad. Everybody gets sad. Nobody gets out of that, right?
Absolutely. Everybody experiences sadness from time to time. And there are sad things in the world. I mean, everybody knows this. You pick up the paper and it's not hard to get sad because there are things that really are troubling and really hurtful in your own family, in your own life, adversity in various kind of ways. But depression is something that lingers a little longer.
Stays.
And we call this, clinical diagnosis or something.
I'm clinically depressed.
Yeah, but people understand it has something that's persisting longer.
Of course, you know our take here, and you just have to laugh. Example is not another way to teach. It's the only way to teach. So I wanted to give Bill an example of what happened to me when I truly was in a deep depression, a deep sadness, and wanted to get Billy's take on it. I'm writing my third book called Quit Whining. Shut Up, Quit Whining, Enjoy Your Life. And I'm writing this book. Right in the middle of writing it, getting stories, people, how humor and laughter help. I'm going through the deepest depression I've ever been in through my life, divorce number 2.
Yes.
And I'm working on this, and all of a sudden I stop on the computer, I pull back, literally throw my head back and start laughing. And I'm going, I'm depressed and I'm writing a book about shut up, quit whining, enjoy your life. Yes. And that thing right there is what completely snapped me out of it.
That's a terrific thing that you did in a very spontaneous way. And contemporary clinicians really have tried to capitalize on this a little bit by really focusing on thinking patterns. We call this cognitive therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy.
Which is just the way you think.
Right. And something happened to you. This was a very spontaneous thing. You don't always have to have a therapist to discover these things.
Right.
People do them innately all the time. They'll discover this helped. You got perspective there.
Right, I did.
And one of the things I think we've discovered is sometimes when depression or any other kind of set of psychiatric symptoms comes on, people become more narrow in their approach to life. It's a natural thing to become more narrow. And then those symptoms persist because of that narrowness.
Gotcha.
So what can pop you out of that narrowness oftentimes is helpful. You did it right in that.
But I realized my behavior and I quit doing it.
Right. But you got perspective. Something occurred to you. Your natural funny bone.
Yeah.
And your ability to, as part of a comedian, to always want to step out and look at the larger system. Right. How can you mine that for some different perspective? You're about getting a different perspective.
Right. That's what it is.
And a lot of times in therapy, one of the most useful things is for people to get flexibility.
Flexibility. That's what you hope for, to keep light on your feet, actually light in your thinking. You want to keep light in your thinking, especially if it gets too narrow or too rigid. And it may be easy with some things, but especially it is hard when it gets personal, when it comes to sadness, and especially, how do you do it when a family member, somebody you love and care about, gets Alzheimer's and dementia? I went through that myself, but I'm not going to tell this story. I'm going to let Marty tell this story. And to begin this story, Marty's going to tell you about her father and her aunt, his father's twin sister, who both were suffering from Alzheimer's and dementia and were living in the same assisted living home. Take it away, Marty.
When he and his twin sister were in the nursing home, now they loved each other, but they didn't always get along. They rubbed each other the wrong way, irritated each other, totally, as long as I can remember. Anyway, they're in the same nursing home because they advanced and progressed at the same rate. They were twins. Whenever they would connect, because they weren't on the same floor or the same wing of this nursing home, they would sit and talk. And I remember saying to my daughter one day when we went by to see them, watch this, and Dad would sit there and he'd look at his sister and go, "Now, you know they sold the house in Westport," which was their parents' home. And she looked at him and said, "No, nobody told me." And he'd respond with, "Well, they did." And she wanted to know where her money was. And he said, "Well, I don't know, I got mine." And then they'd both sink and sulk and be mad over this. And then a couple minutes later, "Well, they sold the house in Westport." And it would start again. And I don't think he ever did it to deliberately irritate her. He just couldn't remember that he told the story, and she couldn't remember that she heard it.
And you guys are sitting out there laughing at it.
Oh, we're just sitting there amazed, just amazed.
Why is that okay to laugh at that? We'll get to the what in just a little bit. But I wanted to know from Marty why it's okay to laugh when somebody is going through Alzheimer's, especially somebody you love and care about.
I think it's very important for the caregiver to learn to laugh at the circumstances. And this is the lesson that I tried to teach my daughter. You're not laughing at the loved one because they're looking stupid or they're saying something stupid. You're laughing at the circumstances that the disease creates, that they have no control over. Grandmother passed away. We took her ashes down to Texas to bury her where her father was buried. And my mother flew down with my dad. My brother drove down with his 3 sons and the ashes. So we're at the funeral home. Now, going down, my dad is asking my mom on the airplane 150 times if he asked once, "Now, where are we going?" And she would say, "We're going to go down and bury Mother's ashes." "Oh, yeah, okay. Now, where are we going?" This would be constant. So we get down there. She tells me this after I see her. And so I'm watching Dad. I'm sitting on a bench outside the funeral home. She's inside getting things ready to go. The boys are running around. And Dad leans over and he says, "Now, your dad's memory's not that good." And I said, "That's okay, Dad. I'll help you remember things." And he said, "Okay. Now, we're here for your grandmother, right?" And I said, "Yeah," thinking, oh, he got it. And he goes, "Then where the hell is she? She's always late."
That's perspective. That's Marty's perspective of the humor, why it's okay to laugh at that stuff. Now, Marty's going to tell you the inside of why, when you are laughing in the humor, what it does and help with the emotion of sadness, stopping the depression.
The laughter offsets the sadness for me because it's a release. Anytime you're stressed and you hold it in, it's like a teapot that's ready to blow. Well, if I held it in too much or didn't find things to laugh about when I would come home, because I was living out of town at the time of the last few years of my dad's life, I would cry all the way back home on the airplane. But the laughter helped me come out of it quickly, or I would cry all the time.
This whole class is about how humor and laughter can help in a difficult time. And what we've learned here from Bill and Marty is humor and laughter keeps us flexible in our thinking. If we can keep flexible and get a perspective of it that makes us think funny, the sadness diminishes, therefore we don't go into the deep depression. Something incredible happens to us when we get to that punchline in our thinking. And that's what the next class is about. What happens to us when we get to that punchline? Keep amused. Keep amused. Why do I say that? Keep thinking funny. Keep laughing. Think funny. Because when you do that, you become flexible. It gives you a perspective of the world and helps you move through the sadness, which will stop the depression. See you at the next class.